Morning YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the Gunman Raw. So today we've got the masking stage on this Honda ZRV. So we've got one door here. There was like a chip and a small dent there, right? So I've done all the repairs and prep work yesterday. I've got the color sitting there. I actually already had a color chip for that. Most of the common colors, with PPG, it's good to sort of build up color library. I found with Standox, it wasn't really necessary. Like, and I'm not saying that I didn't have any of a color library, because I definitely did. But with Stando Blue, I found like the weak point of Stando Blues was like the white pearls. They would always come up too light and not yellow enough. It's nearly like I don't know, like it's nearly like they matched them to have an extra coat of pearl on, because that's what I ended up finding. Yeah, so either way, what I found with Stando Blue is you didn't necessarily always have to have a color card for most common colors, because the color library that they've got with the spray out cards, it was actually really solid. But in saying that, I've heard that they're really expensive to make those color libraries, right? You think about how many different colors are in, you know, have a look over here. Man, there is thousands and thousands of colors in here, right? And you think how long it would take. Obviously they don't do them all individually. They would do these in big boards, right? But they're all proper 2-pack clear over the top. They're proper spray out cards, right? They must do them in, say, big cardboards and then get cut up and then print the labels on the back. But even then, quite an extensive job. Like, it must take quite a bit of labor. And yeah, I guess, yeah, this is what I've got sitting here. I actually made this I bought this into work the other day. I made myself a little color library. I've separated them into different sections. So that's actually cool to have. But yeah, that's the color I've got sitting. Honda ZRV, and I've got all the common colors that we use here. Even if there is a color that I'm happy with, so that's my first port of call with PPG. I'll always go for the color chips, because they do have a Spectro, but it can be really hit and miss. On solid colors, I'll go for the Spectro, but even on solids, like, you still have to check them. And I say that because, like, if you're blending with a solid, or even if you weren't blending, like, I had so much faith in the Standox Spectro on a solid, you could just go edge to edge. If it gave you a high enough rating, I'd just go edge to edge. But yeah, pretty straightforward job. The same thing, there was 2 little dents here, right? So I fixed them. I actually found another little scratch there, so I decided just to feather it out. We're using waterborne paint, so you're not running the risk of having any sort of map ups or sort of fry ups or anything like that, which is good. But in saying that, I've still got a soft spot for my solvent. Like, every now and then I'll do a solvent job, and yeah, there's something about solvent. I still love it. Like, look, all in all, probably, yeah, better off using water. But yeah, I do like just smashing jobs out nice and fast too. Your solvent, it can be a bit more forgiving in certain aspects as well. What I like to do here sometimes, when that edge flicks back up, run a strip like that. And you can just peel that off even after the door's shut. Yeah, it's not even, it's probably only about 6 AM at the moment. I've been waking up, I just started waking up early during, when summer started kicking in. I don't know, it's like the circadian rhythm, just wake up early, and one day I'm like, man, I'm not just gonna sit here in bed for an hour or two just before I go to work. So, because I've got the keys, I just came into work early, and I left at normal time. But then after a few days, I just said to my boss, I'm like, hey man, can I just like start leaving a bit early if I come in early? He's like, yeah, that's fine. Just do your hours. So yeah, that's kind of cool. But my rule of thumb is always make it, if it goes either way, it will always go in his favor. So for instance, today I got here at 6:30, and like I'll leave at, so I did like 1.5 hours in the morning. I'll do half an hour at lunchtime because I only have half. So this, effectively I've done like 1 hour's overtime, but I'll only, 2 hours overtime, but I'll only take the 1 hour off, if that makes sense. So yeah, how have you all been? Hope you had a good good holiday Christmas period. I did, just stayed around town. Sometimes I like doing that, but we got dogs as well, so I don't really like leaving them. I'm sure those of you who have pets will appreciate that stance. One of my dogs is actually blind. We bred our dog, and she had a blind puppy, and we couldn't bear to leave the poor guy go, so we kept him. So now we've got two and a blind dog, but he's awesome. He's the cutest little dog. Cavoodles they are. Yeah, that'll do it. These things, man, they're a nightmare. You need like a screwdriver to get your hand in there. Alright, looking good. So what else is news? I don't know. That's probably why I haven't done a raw video. Like sometimes I run out of stuff to say. Hopefully just watching me mask a car is interesting enough. I ditched the GoPro case, so the audio is probably a little bit clearer in this one than usual. So I obviously need the GoPro case when I'm painting, or else the paint's going to get all over it. But I had the idea, hey, when I'm masking, I probably don't actually need it. So yeah, with the PPG One Visit, that's a good topic to talk about. That's one of the newer things that's been going on lately. So PPG One Visit, for those of you who do not know, is an additive. So you still use the Enviro base, but you put this additive in, and it makes it so that when you go in and put your base coat down, you put it all down in one visit, as the name would suggest. At the start I was absolutely loving it. Like, it smelled exactly like Stando Blue, so that in and of itself is a good thing. It's like that familiar smell. I'm like, man, they've done really well. But then as I started doing a few more jobs, like doing some blends and stuff like that, and just going over things like this, I did that on my own car. I went over like a little cut through like that. It didn't react very well to stuff like that. So I know that if I go the normal 3 coat and I just dust 3 coats, you're not going to get any reaction over that. Whereas, yeah, with that One Visit, I was getting this strange reaction, and I'm not 100% sure if it was just a one-off or if it's something that's going to happen more often. But another thing that happened was, it was actually another one of these cars, a ZRV, right? Exactly the same color as this. So what happened is we did a brand new door shell on it, right? And then blended the 2 adjacent panels. And what ended up happening was I painted the door, blended the adjacent panels, put the door back on, and I actually didn't notice till it was in the outside, and then I saw my video, but the door was a little bit of a different color. And originally I was thinking, oh, maybe it's coverage, right? But then one comment made the valid point, which I had never even thought of, and it totally makes sense. It's crazy how, like, what is it? 25 years in the trade and you're still learning stuff, you know? You'd think you'd get to the point where you know it all, but yeah, don't ever think that you know it all. That's when you may as well just give up at that point. But yeah, well, basically what it was is I put wet on, say, wet on that panel, but on the blend panels I didn't. What the person made me realize is potentially the way that the metallic sits on a sanded panel compared to how it sits on wet was the difference. So it's not necessarily that the coverage wasn't there. It was, yeah, the way metallic sits on a different surface. But I mean, I guess I was surprised because it has never come up in the past, and I've done that heaps, like with Stando Blue. Even with PPG, with a 3-coat system, I've done that heaps, and that issue's never really come up. So yeah, maybe it's just something that's unique to PPG One Visit and that method. So either way, I definitely won't be doing that next time. But on the other hand, like I don't like putting wet on wet on the adjacent panels if they don't need it, right? If it's just a blend panel, I like to keep it nice and clean and just put the base coat on there. So, you know, the potential time saving of when you're putting your base coat on, it kind of gets eaten up pretty quickly when you're mucking around putting, blending your wet on wet onto adjacent panels and all these other things. It takes longer to dry. The One Visit definitely does take longer to dry. Because it's such a thick film, it's always going to take a lot longer to dry. So you've got to bake it, right? Even if it's just say a 5 or 10 minute bake. Whereas with your standard 3-coat system, you're putting medium coats on, they dry pretty much bang, bang, bang like that. And if you do want to make for a slightly better job, you can still give it a 5-minute bake. And sometimes I do opt to do that, especially on a 3-layer. I'll always give it a bake on a 3-layer, maybe even longer than 5 minutes. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, look, I'm still happy to have the One Visit. I'm not, like, you know, going to start throwing it out and never use it. Haven't given up on it for sure. But I just think, like anything else, it's a tool. Use it as such. So it's not going to be for every job, and that's okay, you know. I've used it for a few solid colors, and the way that they recommend mixing it up is I think it was like 15% thinners and then 5% One Visit additive. That makes it really runny, and yeah, the coverage is pretty good but not 100%. So yeah, like on a full respray, I'll definitely still be using it, right? But on jobs like this, yeah, maybe not quite so much. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it. Like, it's cool to have the option. Like, look, I was even at a point before the One Visit came out where, look, I've pretty much overcome most of the issues that I had with PPG anyway. I am happy at work. I'm happy using it. I've still got some criticisms, and that's kind of like the funny thing about it. Some people, they can't hear criticisms of something that they like, so it's like, I don't hate PPG, I don't hate it, it's just paint, man. Like, my job, right, as a YouTuber, is to criticize products, right, and give critique, highlight their strong and weak points. And if, you know, if I've used, this is the way I see it, like, if you've driven a Ferrari or a Lambo and then you get put into a Hyundai or something like that, like the Hyundai gets you to work, it's fine, or a Toyota, but you know, it's never going to be quite as good as a Hyundai or Lambo, as the Lambo, you know. And I say, you know, Standox and the X-Alta brands, that's the Lamborghinis, you know, that's the premium top, and like it appears that nothing else has been able to come close to it. It's just how it is, man. It doesn't mean that, yeah, I hate PPG. There were some annoying things about it, and so a lot of the criticism is the way that it's supported as well. Like the information that you're given on the system is really important. Like when you're told to mix up the base coat at 15% reducer, and so from me, like coming from Standox, right, if you put more reducer into Stando Blue, it increases the drying time, right? So it actually slows it down, right? So I don't default to knowing that putting more reducer in PPG speeds it up, and it does, right? So what was happening is I was using the recommended 15%, which is recommended by PPG Australia, And then I was getting like pickling up. It was like pulling back, like wasn't solvable. That was originally what I thought. Like I was thinking about it. It was the clear was an issue, but it wasn't. It was the base coat, right? I was raising the issues too. I'm like, man, what's going on with this? And they were just like, no, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Instead of giving me the right information, being like, hey, this is the issue. This is the fix. You know, it's like they either didn't know or didn't want to help, right? That's the way it sort of came across. So I finally got this guy from, I'm still in contact with him, a Swedish guy, ex-PPG rep. But he's basically the one that got me under. He's like, man, you got to put more thinners in it, blah, blah, blah. And a few American guys over there helped me out heaps with it too. Now I've got it to a point that I'm really happy with the way that it's working for me. So it's not necessarily the product, and even then, look, the product isn't as good as Standox, right? It's not as good, but yeah, like I think it's a valid criticism to say, man, why are all my jobs losing gloss and they're turning to like a near on a satin finish, right? And like I say, it's actually a systemic issue. It's the way that the system is supported. It's not necessarily the paint in and of itself. And it makes you wonder, like, why have they taken it on themselves here in Australia to go and mess with the mixing ratios, even the recommended mixing ratios from PPG America. Like it's not meant to be mixed up like that. And it does lead to issues. It's not inconsequential, right, to mix the paint up wrong. One thing that happens relatively often, I've seen it happen a fair bit, you'll get cars coming back and the clear will peel, right? And what I think is happening is because they've told people to mix it up wrong at 15%, it looks dry on the top, but it's sort of skinned over on the top and it's still a bit gummy underneath. So as the paint dries and you put your clear coat on, you're breaking that bond because there's still a bit of water up underneath there. And it's exactly what's going on even with my jobs when, well, previously when the clear was losing all of its gloss, it was because the base coat was pulling back into it, right? So again, you're creating more issues than you're solving. Like you might solve, well, you can get an extra like half of a coat less because you got better coverage. And I'm wondering if that's the reason that they did it. It was slightly better coverage. But like, I still remember the first time I moved over to 25% thinners. Like I was painting the side on a car, started down here, bang, 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 walked down here, and then I came back and I was like, oh my God, it's dry already. So yes, you may need to put an extra half of a coat. And for one, if you get your shades of primer, it won't really be, like the shade, the ground shade, it's not gonna be an issue for coverage. But yeah, it's just gonna actually make it faster when you're in the booth, because you're not gonna, and I remember like you'd put a coat on previously when you're at 15%, you'd be waiting forever, you'd be blowing it. It's like, man, you're not saving anything by doing it that way. So like it's just straight up wrong, right? The way that they recommend to paint it here in Australia, like there's nothing else I can say. And like you can listen to that rant of mine and think, oh, he hates PPG. But you would be wrong, right? I don't hate PPG. I want you to do better, right? I want you to take that criticism and say, hey, is there an ounce of truth inside it? You know, or you can just turn around and say, oh, he just hates PPG, you know? Well, yeah, I think that's not really the right way to look at it. Like sometimes I listen to a bit of the Stoic philosophy, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and stuff like that, and what they say, when you're criticized, like the instant reaction is going to be to defend yourself, right? But what they say is like, calm down for a second, like, you know, just don't take it personally. Think about objectively what has been said. Is there any honest, you know, is there any truth in that criticism? And if so, take it on board and improve yourself. Like, and I guess that's my advice to, you know, any of my criticism towards PPG, because it doesn't come from a place of hate. That's like I'm not actually a hateful person, believe it or not. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's where I stand with PPG. But in saying all of that, I love the new clear coats that they've got. They've got the 177, which is a fast clear. Probably use that a little bit less, more on the smash work. Jobs like this, I could use it on. But in saying that, what I actually did on my car, so we did that C200 Benz of, well, it's actually my wife's car, but it's mine, whatever, who cares? Who's counting? What I did on that car, I painted the whole job with the quartz, but then we had to like do an extra door. Like the color didn't quite blend, so either way, I blended one of the doors, and I deliberately used the 177 on that, just so that I can keep an eye on it, because one of the things with a lot of these cars, man, like I don't get to see how the clear coat always holds up. Like I just put the paint on and the cars go, you know. So yeah, where possible, when I'm painting my own cars, I want to sort of treat it as somewhat of an experiment to see how these products last. But then another important thing is the conditions that the paint is in. Like, so for instance, my Tirana has been painted with the liquid glass, but you could nearly have used one of the cheaper paints on it and it would hold up just as well, because it's always garaged. So like that's, yeah, the way that you look after your paint is actually quite important. I saw a really good example of that recently. Like I did a XD Ford Falcon Blue XD Ford Falcon respray about a year or so ago. And that came back a year later, like not long ago, to do a couple of other things on it. And the paint was immaculate. It looked like it just rolled out of here, right? Obviously been garaged its whole life. A week after that, we had another car come in, and it was one of the resprays that we did on one of the patrols. And it was oxidized. It looked absolutely terrible. It had gone all chalky, right? It was just that I was embarrassed that was one of my paint jobs. And the funny thing about that is that had only been about 6 months. So less time, obviously not treated as well. But you know, you can't blame that on people. That's not their fault. They do what they do with their cars, you know. Some people don't have garages. So yeah, basically the same clear, the LVC 105. Which is why now I really don't rate it after seeing that. Like, hey, as I say, any clear will do well, or pretty much, in like when it's garage, right? So the XD looking good after a year in the garage, it doesn't, like, that's not a big sales point. But the Patrol looking crap after 3 months or 6 months, whatever it was, that's bad. Like, that reflects poorly. It shouldn't. I don't think that clear should have looked that bad after that short of a time. And especially, like I say myself, implementing these things to try to make it last as long as I can, you know, adding the extra thinners, observing flash off times, baking where necessary, baking your base coat where necessary, things like that, should increase the quality of the clear, but you can only do so much, of course. Oops. No damage, that's good. I thought I was gonna go over the top. Yeah, that's about it, guys. No, it's really interesting listening to the Stoic philosophy. Just one thing they say is, well, alright, they say lots of things. Go listen to it. It's just amazing. Like, these people living thousands and thousands of years ago, the wisdom that they have, you know. What was one of the ones that I liked? They said, when somebody's criticizing you, compliment them. And another one, this is actually Jocko Willink, who I'm sure most of you guys know. But he was like, when somebody's like in an angry mood or whatever, what you got to try and do is like, you don't position, like, don't disagree with them. You can like, because then you're gonna put yourself as on the other side of them. Like, you want to hear their thing, hear what they have to say, and sort of like you'll de-escalate it that way, like get so that you oh really, like, oh no, is that what happened? And then you can sort of de-escalate the situation better. Interesting stuff. Who knows if you're ever going to use it, but yeah, it's one thing knowing like the right thing to do or the best thing to do in a situation, but it's another thing doing it, like, yeah, you know, because we are just to a certain degree we are who we are, and it's difficult to react in the way that you necessarily would like to, but it's always good to know, I guess. Pop that lock open. I guess this video is probably getting a little bit too long for a raw vid. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I might even just continue on with this and do a raw vid for the base coat and clear coat too, so be sure to stick around for that. I really got to start pumping out the raw vids again. Been a bit lazy lately. But yeah, if you like the video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Coming out.